Hey everybody, Matty Nelson, Seekers Precision, and we're out here at Hat Creek. Want to talk about wind. One more quick video to help you guys out, maybe get you some helpful shooting tips as far as reading the wind goes and how that is. So we've done a couple other videos on it. Please watch those. There's a lot of information there that you can break down and start to utilize. We did a video on a gun number or a wind number for a specific gun, for a specific caliber. So a 308 is a 4-mile-an-hour wind gun, a 6.5 Creedmoor is a 5-mile-an-hour wind gun. I want to talk a little bit about how we break that down to get better, more precise wind calls at distance, even though I don't have somebody, some poor guy down there with a Kestrel give me a wind call every couple hundred meters. So let's take a 308 for example. Okay, so a 308 is a 4-mile-an-hour wind gun, which means for a 4-mile-an-hour wind, that is a full value wind. So coming straight in from the 3 o'clock or the 9 o'clock, for every 100 meters, that's a 1/10 of wind. So if I have a right to left wind, and it's 4 miles an hour, full value, for every 100 meters, I'm gonna need to hold another 1/10 of wind. That's ballpark math, guys. Don't beat us up online for that stuff, but that will generally, most 308s are gonna fall inside that 4-mile-an-hour bracket. So if I'm shooting a target that's 400 meters away, my minimum hold to start with is gonna be 4/10 of wind, if that makes sense. We have a bigger video explaining all that stuff. Check out our YouTube channel, guys. You can watch that video there. What I want to talk about is how I use that kind of quick wind ballpark bracket method for targets that are farther out. So up the bowling alley here, we're here at Hat Creek on a beautiful spring day. You can see all the way up the cut, guys. We got targets all the way up there, all the way out to 900 yards at the very top up there. So how I break that down is particularly here at Hat Creek, the wind is super tricky. We got the wind coming from left to right now. Just a second ago, it was coming like straight from the 12 o'clock, right behind me, straight into the camera. And then a couple minutes ago, it was coming from the right to the left. So the wind is always changing and doing different things, particularly for targets that are farther away. So how I bracket that is I'm gonna start breaking down that distance. Let's say we wanna shoot 700 meters with a 308, it's a 4-mile-an-hour gun. That wind is not going to be doing the same thing all the way out there. So if it's 700 meters, 700 yards away, it's going to be a minimum of 7/10 of wind if it was a full value all the way. But let's say at the shooting position, I don't have any. But as I look down the next 200 meters, I look at the vegetation, I look at what the treetops are doing, I look at what the branches are doing on the trees, I look at the bugs and the cotton fluffs in the air and how fast they're moving and where they're going, and I think, okay, that's a 6-mile-an-hour wind there. And then I go the next 200 meters. So I'm 200 to 400 meters, and I think it's just a pretty calm 4-mile-an-hour wind. And then I go to the next 200 meters and there's nothing. I go to the next 200 meters all the way out to the target. I break that up in 200-meter increments and look at the vegetation and what that vegetation is doing, what the wind is doing, things that I can see in the air flying around, and I base my ballpark wind call off of that. There is some swag involved in that, right? We're gonna have to guess at what we think the wind is doing. That takes a lot of practice to be able to look at vegetation in a certain area and say, hey, that's an 8 to 10-mile-an-hour wind, okay? Walk around, get a wind meter, get a Kestrel, get something, and as you feel that wind, take a guess at what it is, hold it up, get a good wind reading, and then see how far off you were. What does it feel like? What is the vegetation on the ground doing? What are the trees doing that are in my immediate area? Okay, that's what an 8-mile-an-hour wind looks like. That's what a 12-mile-an-hour wind looks like. And as you get a lot of practice in it, and as you become familiar with the areas that you shoot in and making those wind calls, it will become easier and easier for you just to look out, get on your scope, look at the target, look at all of the things in between you and the target. What are the bugs doing in the air? What are the treetops doing? What's the vegetation doing? In the flight path of my bullet, what are the treetops doing up there? And you'll be able to start to bracket that wind call and swag that wind call a little bit better each time. A couple of tricks to making that work, guys, is build a good enough position to be able to see what happened. If you can't manage that recoil and you bounce all over the place and you don't see where you missed, it's really tough to make a correction. In the PRS game, in the tactical game, in tactical real-world scenarios, the game has become how far away can we get and still launch rounds into that target accurately. One shot, one kill, one shot, one hit briefs really well if you're 400 meters and in, but once you get out there a little bit farther, the atmospherics, the wind, all that stuff plays a much, much bigger role. So you need to be able to build a position that is stable enough to be able to manage that recoil, follow your shot, see what happened, see the miss, see the hit, and then make corrections to refine your accuracy at that distance. Hope that's a helpful tip, guys. Pay attention to our Seekins YouTube channel. We got a bunch of stuff on there. Hopefully you find these tips helpful, guys. Let us know in the comments and get out there and get after it, guys. Get some trigger time, get your Seekins guns out there, and start sending some rounds down range and figuring out your system and how your methods for calling these wins and ballparking some of this math and working that in to your daily shooting regimen and style. Get after it, guys.